In the meantime, Congressman Mike McCaul back with us, the House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman. Chairman, it's always good having you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me.
This meeting between Antony Blinken and the Saudi defense minister, there's been some criticism of the Saudis that they haven't been more, not necessarily supportive of Israel. We understand where they stand, but they haven't, been exactly even condoning Israel or helping Israel in any way, certainly, or that is the perception with their Arab neighbors. Are you worried?
Well, yeah, to some extent, but I will say this, just given the history of Israel and Mecca and Saudi Arabia, they've been enemies in the past, but lately with the Abraham Accords, and I hope this visit will expand those, the normalization agreement, they understand the enemy of the enemy is my friend, and that is Iran. So they fear Iran the most. They don't like Hamas's tie and allegiance to Iran, nor Hezbollah. So I see this as and by the way, this meeting was supposed to take place before Hamas even invaded Israel. Hamas, you asked me in a previous interview, why now? Why did Hamas attack Israel? Well, it was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur fight, but also I believe that Hamas saw the normalization taking place between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and they want to do something to stop it. So I think right now our credibility is on the line. If we're not successful in Israel, our credibility in the Arab world will go down the toilet, and then Iran and China will come in and fill the vacuum.
Congressman, you're right to go back 50 years ago, the Yom Kippur War, a very different environment then, and the Arab world stuck together not only against Israel, but against us helping Israel. That led to, the Arab oil embargo and the long gas lines, and we can all remember that, those of a certain age. So now the question becomes, it's a very different environment, I get that, but you don't hear condemnation of Hamas from anyone in the Arab world, and I wonder what that could tell you.
Well, I think certainly in Jordan, they have a lot of Palestinians in their population. Egypt basically tried to kick them out and threw them in the Gaza Strip. If you look at history there, nobody wants them, and that's part of the problem. Is the humanitarian crisis. None of these Arab nations want to receive the Palestinians. So that takes us to the Rafah gate itself. Right. I just heard the first American citizen just got released out of there. That's what we want to see. But we also don't want a gate that's going to be open to fund and equip and arm Hamas. So I think the screening has to be very carefully done. And I've been given assurances it is, but we don't want to be funding this war, funding Hamas in this war against Israel.
Yeah, not all Americans are finding that pathway out so easy. We're going to be talking to a young couple dealing with that as we speak, Congressman. But to your point, it is supposedly being checked and rechecked. But ahead of that, I did want to get your take on aid that might be coming Israel's way. You've been among those concerned that it's Israel-only aid, that eventually you said at the end of the day, we must see the Ukraine threat as linked together with Israel. What did you mean by that?
Well, all these threats are linked together. When you look at who our adversaries are and their alliance, quite frankly, between Putin and his invasion of Ukraine and threat to Europe, to Chairman Xi in China and his threat to Taiwan and the Pacific, the greatest we've seen since my dad's war, World War II. And then you look at the Ayatollah in Iran and his threat to Israel. They're all enemies of the United States and the West, and they're all tied together. They're all linked together. I think this package, we're going to start with Israel, and that's appropriate given the threat to Israel and the urgency. But all these threats are tied together. And the last one, Neil, quite frankly, is the last line of defense, and that's our southwest border. So we have to tackle all these issues, I think, to really deal with the threats that we face as a nation.
Chairman, and I'll be dealing with this with other guests throughout this show, as I have earlier on Fox Business, this notion that Iran's provocative attacks, even through emissaries or, groups, is such 28 attacks in little more than 2 weeks. And our response has been to go after, those entities that are acting on Iran's behalf, but not on Iran itself. Do you think that's a mistake? Should we target Iran if we have unequivocal proof Iran is behind these attacks on U.S. soldiers?
Well, I don't think we want to see escalation, and that would require an authorization of use of military force that would come out of my committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Right. We don't want to see escalation with Hezbollah or Iran, and that's why the deterrence is so important. These carrier strike groups now in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf provide that deterrence against Hezbollah and Iran. But I think the administration was a little slow in responding to the attacks on our soldiers in Iraq and
Chairman,
Syria. I'm glad they're finally responding.
If you can just hang on to that point of view. The president is speaking right now in, I believe, Northfield, Minnesota. I believe he's addressing the Israeli situation. Let's listen.